it's Melina. I'm at the Genzio Media House here in Denver, Colorado. Today I'm joined by Kat from Space and Time. We talk about how Space and Time is empowering people to create better apps in crypto. And we also talked about community building. Check it out. Thank you so much for being here, Kat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to talk about Space and Time. Talk to us about what this is. And
Yeah. Space and Time is a blockchain for ZK proven data, which sounds very technical, and
Yes.
it is very technical, very developer focused, but all it really is a decentralized database that's embedded with ZK and built for verifiable database computation. So when we set out to build Space and Time starting about 3.5 years ago, we noticed that there was really a vacuum in the crypto infra space for a database that was crypto native. Most crypto projects and apps are using centralized databases and then plugging that into their decentralized infrastructure. And
when we say centralized, I think of like Amazon,
an AWS database or a Postgres database or Snowflake, like these really traditional Web 2 technology stacks. And obviously when you introduce something centralized like that, it becomes a single point of failure within your stack. So even if you're using a smart contract, even if you're using other decentralized infrastructure like an Oracle network, for example, your database is still a point of failure. And we were like, let's fix that. So we built Space and Time. We invented a ZK proof for SQL queries, which is the language that people use to run database queries, and we shipped that to the community. We're in testnet right now and launching mainnet later this year. So
I love that you are focusing on something that there's a need for. You know, a lot of times in crypto, people are just creating products that nobody really needs.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the importance of not having it centralized, because I think a lot of people still don't understand that concept, right? We're in crypto, we want to be decentralized. So maybe touch on that.
Let's talk about DeFi, for example. Yes. Because I think the more your app or your protocol is securing value, the more important it is that everything in the stack is decentralized and verifiable, because that's kind of the core principles of crypto, right? So a lot of the OG DeFi protocols that you think of, like Aave, for example, are not using off-chain databases and off-chain infrastructure because they can't be centralized. They can't have points of failure. And so those are fully on-chain apps. But because of that, they're relatively simple compared to their TradFi counterparts, going with the Aave example. Like a traditional bank lending process will look at a whole lot of data about the borrower to give them a personalized rate. And that makes, it better risk adjusted for the lender and, gives better rates of return for borrowers that have good credit. And that's kind of how the system works. But with Aave, you don't have those kinds of data points because a smart contract is really rudimentary in the amount of data it's able to access. And so to solve that, a lot of applications have introduced a centralized database into their infrastructure to be able to process more complex data. But like we talked about, that introduces a point of failure. And if you're securing a lot of money on chain, the ability for a centralized entity like a database administrator, for example, or a hacker to manipulate that is really problematic. And so we've decided to build Space and Time to kind of fill that gap and give protocols another option, right? Like fully on-chain apps like Aave, for example, can use Space and Time in a verifiable way to expand the data that they're able to use and access. And other apps that are maybe building from the ground up also have this and don't have to rely on centralized infrastructure.
Who would you say needs Space and Time? Obviously you mentioned Aave, but who do you think you're truly addressing right now? For, like you said, the builders that probably don't know or haven't thought about it, who are you trying to attract?
Definitely DeFi protocols like we talked about. I think those building Web3 games, that's something that's very data intensive and requires a lot of data processing, and most of those today are using centralized databases. Introducing something like Space and Time that can provide that data in a verifiable way opens up new things like rewarding players on chain for things that they did in game, for example. Any kind of like restaking protocol, that needs to reward node operators in a verifiable way based on what's happening on chain, like needing access to on-chain data. But really the answer is everyone building in crypto, everyone building an app in Web2 or Web3 needs a database, and Space and Time is the database for crypto.
What would you say is like the importance of because we hear this word all the time. I feel like decentralization is just like such a big buzzword at this point. So how do we attract people to understand why decentralization?
That's a great question. I think like we all got into crypto because of the idea that we don't want to have to trust centralized entities to handle our money. And that's something most people can understand and relate to, especially when you think of things like, the banking crisis of 2008 and stuff like that. Like there's real tangible examples of people being burned by this. I mean, FTX in 2022, for example. But when you kind of start to expand that notion of putting the control back in the hands of individuals and expand it beyond just finance, but you think about your own personal data as a user, or what you're able to create and how you're able to monetize your business individually, it becomes a really powerful concept across the board. So I think people understand it fundamentally and people are generally behind it. We just need better on-ramps for people to get on board with it, right? Like everyone talks about how we need better user-facing apps in crypto. And I totally agree. I think that is kind of right now the missing piece to getting people to use not just crypto, but blockchain technology at scale. And once we solve that, I think we solve the issue as a whole.
But some of it can be solved now with Space and Time.
Absolutely. And it's funny. People are like, oh, you talk a lot about how crypto needs better apps, but you're building an infrastructure project. You're just building more infrastructure, and super valid. But I would say something like Space and Time that, like you said earlier, fills a gap of something people really need.
Exactly.
Is enabling better apps. Like you can't build more sophisticated crypto apps without something like Space and Time. You can't improve the UX of crypto apps, like going back to our Aave example, and scale it to meet, the demands of what people expect in like a TradFi counterpart without something like Space and Time. So yes, we're building infrastructure, but we're building it to enable better apps and ultimately onboard more people to this crazy ecosystem that we're all really passionate about.
So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. Obviously, we're here in Denver. You're from here, or you live here. What are you hoping to achieve at ETH Denver this year?
It's a really exciting time for Space and Time, no pun intended. We're in testnet right now. We launched testnet in October at Chainlink SmartCon, and we're really, really close to launching mainnet. We're looking at like hopefully early Q2 for that. So we're definitely looking to connect with builders. Of course, we always want to make more developers aware of what Space and Time is and the tools that they have at their fingertips with Space and Time. But also just kind of excited to see the energy and the excitement. I feel like compared to last year and compared to the last
tell me what's the difference?
Was really like, we all know the last year or so has been like Solana meme coin season. And I don't pretend to be like an expert on the way the market moves, but I do kind of feel like we're maybe past the peak of that, at least for now, and there's a real appetite for real tech, and people are once again looking for projects that are actually delivering value in the space rather than just pump and dumping. So that's exciting for projects like us that are actually really building real tech and delivering real value to the industry. So I'm excited to see that. I haven't been to the main conference yet, but I'm excited to go and, see some familiar faces.
What else can you tell us ahead of Space and Time and the launch? How can people connect with you? Maybe even find out more info?
Yeah, I would say follow us on X at spaceandtimedb. And you can also join our Discord, discord.gg/spaceandtimedb. Those are our two main channels to find out more. We have a really amazing community that's been with us for almost 3 years now and just growing every day. So we really invite anyone to join, whether or not you're a developer or just someone who is passionate about, like I said, kind of ushering in the future of crypto apps and bringing more users on board. We have a lot of fun stuff that we do, a lot of fun activities we hold, and everyone's welcome.
So let's say like someone like me, I'm a content creator. I create a lot of content, and I really, that's kind of how I entered crypto. I was like, I want to be able to prove what I do, but also not necessarily KYC all the time, right? To your point, and put stuff on the web, and would this be something that I can maybe join the community as well? Because I mean, I love what you're talking about, because I think it's super interesting. And like I said, not just because you're here, but it's finally something that I feel like we needed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's perfect for someone like you. I'm the same way. Like to be honest, have never written a SQL database query in my life, but I am very passionate about what we're building and the mission behind it and the community that we've built around it. So content creators, just crypto enthusiasts, anyone that is kind of looking for a place where like-minded people believe in that, come join us.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was so fun. Anything else you wanted to share with everyone here ahead of the conference?
I would just say join our amazing community and keep building.
Brought to you by Hedera and Foresight Ventures.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a hive.
We do not understand that we need to work hard. Ladies and gentlemen,
We're back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today.